stuff that you need me to sign tonight?
Maybe after the meeting,
Okay.
but I don't have anything.
So, Nicole, are there any discrepancies between the packet and the agenda?
Not this time.
She just does it to test them.
I did find one typo, and I was like, if I fix this now,
John will get it wrong.
John.
John will screw it up.
And Heather's, whoa. I know, you're feeling angry still.
Still.
I just gotta get
Thursday
used to
long,
going,
so-
looking
Just
here.
hang on.
I didn't realize.
I'll remember to tell you if I make any changes.
Hey, how you doing?
That way I can get off the second half of this constructive. Carol. It was fun to watch.
See if your gavel's heard.
I haven't gotten anything
Yeah.
on that
Extra fun for you.
banner thing yet.
Oh, okay, because
You keep thinking
it's like, I don't know,
just there.
where to go with that.
Well, and I wonder
know.
how many
I
post-game
haven't gotten
interviews after a
anything
loss he's gonna
last
hear
time.
that, because it
They
comes
sent
up
it to
every.
me like the last minute. So what I'll do is I'll send them a note saying, do you,
It'd be
Yeah.
nice, just so I can plan it, because I
I
have
know.
other stuff I wanna do Saturday, and I don't know if it's in the
And
morning.
I'm thinking, okay, if you
Morning.
play at least in the
usually morning,
Denver game,
and it usually
Go ahead,
doesn't
Sabrina.
take very
Have
long.
you done it before?
Yeah,
I mean, he could affect the outcome of the game.
yeah,
As long as I know.
yeah, it usually doesn't take very long.
Memories.
But as I recall, they like send it to me.
So it's
Yeah.
like banners, so is there like banners that they've made?
Kids, part of the thing is they make their own banner.
Let's try playing, I don't know, 4 quarters of
And then you,
3-day
t-shirts. they-
Hey.
Put
Hey, Billy.
things on them.
Yeah, you feel
So
better?
what they'll do is they'll meet with you, judges, and they give you the score sheet
Yeah.
on how to score with them. So you have other judges, you're not all by yourself.
I know.
So there's 2 others.
You know,
So
you
they'll
never
just
know.
walk From
Should we go ahead?
T-shirt to banner and T-shirt, and you judge which one's most creative, which one's the, you know,
Is this AYSO?
yeah.
Okay. All right, well, that gives me a little more peace of mind.
Pretty good, sir.
You can call him Grandpa, you can't call me Grandma. Just so you know.
G?
Made up my own name. I said, no, Grandma. Okay. I will open the city council meeting on Tuesday, September 18th, 2018, for the Beaumont City Council at 5:00 p.m. We will be going into closed session, so could I have a call to order, please?
Councilmember Santos,
Here.
Councilmember White, absent at the moment. Councilmember Lara,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Here.
Mayor Carroll.
Here. Do we have any requests to speak?
We do not.
Thank you. So we have no public comments. City Attorney, would you please read the items for discussion?
Yes, the council is meeting in closed session on item number 2, conference with legal counsel regarding potential initiation of litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4. Item number 3, conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation and significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. There are 3 claims that we'll be addressing, and that's by Teresa Espinoza, Marion Huff, and William Huff. And then item number 4 is conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, city designated representative, city manager Todd Parton or his designee, and it's regarding the police managers. And that's it.
Thank you. We will adjourn to closed session.
Officer?
I'm doing well, thank you very much.
Good. How you doing?
It's the best bread ever. Is that artesian bread?
Oh, yeah.
I love it. It's a lot of bread, but that's okay. I don't care.
You're up.
This is my dinner for council. Sandwich. Anybody want to bring me tacos? My family's literally having tacos tonight. So unfair. So unfair. And I'm eating a sandwich. But you know,
They're supposed to be set
Take your time.
Yeah, yeah. Once they start cruising, it's a whole new gig.
yeah, the crawling is already pretty.
Where's she going?
Yeah, I know.
Like, whoa, you were
I
just
used
here a
to be
second
able
ago.
to like sit her on the floor in my bedroom and then like go take a shower and then come back and she'd just be like, she couldn't really go to sleep. And she could just sit or fall over. Now it's like she's following me, climbing on the shower. Oh, you did?
Oh, are we sitting here or
I'll
over
sit
there?
over by Peyton, kick him in the balls. See if he's got police protection tonight. So I found the old capital asset list, let me show you. All they did was take Alvin's list and they plugged this in, plugged in a bunch of sewer line, 131 million, just plug that in. Yeah, that's a calculation. And then they just plugged all this in. So that kept it in, now we know that was all embezzled. And then this, we'll just plug in the value of these lift stations. Oh, sure, it's worth 3.8 million.
Oh, really?
Oh, sure, oh, sure. That's easy enough to figure out. The only question is,
Which number, what number was it? Two?
so Michael said to me today that he would like to open a management position. You know, I don't have.
He'd better learn how to get sod delivered to people's homes first.
Well.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Let's get us on.
We might.
No, it, you know, what I told him about, I don't have.
No, because we don't have one. We don't have that opening.
Well, no, there's no opening right now, but what I told him is I don't mind training him. He could take the training anywhere. But his big problem is that he don't want to give direction to the other people. And he can't be a manager if you don't want to tell other people what to do.
Right.
So he's got to work on that, so. I don't know about your friends,
He isn't getting better?
no, you really have to be,
I know.
you really have to
Well,
watch. what you
When
say to
Jason tells you something, you should know.
You're the one that,
Not where you want to know.
Well, he's a good waterer and a worker.
yeah, he hasn't.
Are you
But we
talking
really
at
have to-
public comment or not?
I don't think I have anything to say. On pull the check warrant, I'll talk about Heartland,
Oh.
and, that thing with, what's it?
So, talk about what's that now?
Heartland, this is at $75,000.
Oh,
Let me show it to you.
no, I don't want to know.
Okay. The bullshit, you know, for that, general
Yeah.
plan, blah, blah, blah. General plan was expired in 2015. Why you even pretend you're doing it? All you're doing is funneling money out of the city. And, what's the plan, 100 million square feet warehouses? That's great. That's a great plan.
Highway Patrol said that he's sitting on the corner watching those trucks coming from the warehouse.
The way we're sitting on that corner.
Corner of
See them hug. Did Bonnie and Clyde hug, I guess? Did Al Capone and Lefty Swope hug? I don't know, man. I don't know. Hey, buddy, get your raise.
catching them, catching them, the trucks come by. And he said, it was Amazon warehouse in
Two by 1.5.
Beaumont? Yes. There isn't one. Huh? I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea. But that's, he said he's catching the truck drivers from the Amazon warehouse. Well, that's what I said.
That's what dirty bucket deals they pull.
Ugh.
Hey, John, do you have a minute? Yes, sir.
Just that.
Oh.
That's all.
After he replied, he says. I have to look
No,
at it.
never mind, don't worry. Oh, yeah. Oh, wait, I can find it right now. Oh, maybe I can.
Good evening.
Hello there. How are we doing today?
Okay, this is for,
That's fine, yeah.
down there on that. You didn't know the gossip? Oh, I can't believe that. Anyway. Here was what? He was all cleaned up. First, it was like a bum that he is. And then he, but, so, when, and I was right behind the cookie here, and Marie was right here. And you know, they both got up and looked at us like we were criminals. Before? Oh, that was a dirty trick. That was dirty. Don't worry. Now they're saying they can't give us off the record, and they're gonna try to make us pay for them. They have to learn state law. The sheriff. I'm in jail. Well, what does it matter at this point? At this point, they all got off. They all should be sitting in prison right now, you know that, as well as I do. Hey, you know, this just shows all these up here, that you can get by with that kind of steal of taxpayer money. That's what I say. Makes them very bold.
back here, I think, with signing some documents.
Yeah. So how's your
Council meeting.
Picture, I just took them to Disney. How's your
He
baby?
waited for just 2 meetings before.
Oh, they grow so fast.
we were there.
I took
It's
them.
already
Right.
At least he's got.
There, we were at downtown Disney, so they were making Lego kitty cats there. She says she just turned 6. She just turned, well, this actually, her birthday's Thursday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we're going. Yeah, he was there 2 nights this week. Yes, the other one. They were out of She can't stay away.
Both have IQ below 130.
Yeah. Just had it.
He started getting dog. So he's 2 years old.
Yeah.
Feels like it's been a while since we've been here. I don't know. Has it been? Oh, more than that.
Time to get away.
Want to get away?
Yeah.
Oh, crap. Stop being so sarcastic.
Some of the stuff.
We almost killed him. No, that was totally.
Oh,
So much.
okay. I like that. See, I'm feeling. I made my prediction on the back of the agenda.
I hope you're optimistic. That's what I hope. Bus riding. Maybe I'll drive, huh?
Yeehaw.
I heard it's no cakewalk.
We doggies.
It's not a cakewalk. Okay. Let's put this under here. Up to 29. Okay, here's the closed session.
So what's the
Don't mess that up for me.
I still forgot about that. See, my memory's not the best. Write me a note to self.
No water.
Just
Oh, I'll go get some.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, he was elected official.
Okay.
What was he elected to?
Chief's gonna go get some. There's a,
Kiss the rear end of Chuck Butcher for how many years? Like he said, he doesn't do anything.
We are back from closed session at 6 p.m. Could I please have a report out from our city attorney?
Yes. The council met in closed session. Item number 2 was conference with legal counsel regarding potential initiation of litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4. There was no reportable action taken. Item number 3, conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation and significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2 relating to 3 claims. The first one by Teresa Espinoza, and the other 2 by Marion and William Huff. And there was reportable action taken on those items. As to the Espinoza claim, there was a motion that was made by Councilmember White and seconded by Councilmember Santos to deny the claim. And the vote was Mayor Carroll, yes to deny the claim, Vice Mayor Martinez to deny the claim, Councilmember White to deny the claim, Councilmember Lara to deny the claim, and Councilmember Santos to deny the claim. As to the claims submitted by Marion and William Huff, there was reportable action. There was a motion to deny their claims, and the first was made by Councilmember Lara, and the second was by Mayor Carroll, and the vote was Mayor Carroll, yes to deny the claim. Vice Mayor Martinez, yes to deny the claim. Councilmember Santos in favor of denying the claim. Councilmember Lara to deny the claim. And Councilmember White also to deny the claim. And then as to item number 4 on closed session, that was conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. City designated representative, City Manager Todd Parton or his designee. Also present was Carrie Mendoza, and it was regarding the police managers. There was no reportable action taken on that item. And that's a report out from closed session.
Thank you. We need to make note that Councilmember White joined closed session at 5:07. Call to order, please, at 6:03.
Councilmember Santos?
Here.
Councilmember White?
Here.
Councilmember Lara?
here.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Here.
Mayor Carroll?
Here. Do I have, let's see, who do I have? City Manager, Mr. Parton, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Please join in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Conflict of interest disclosure. I will be excusing myself from item number 13. Do I have any other conflicts or adjustments? Okay, with that, I will move on to public comments. Any one person may address the City Council on any matter not on this agenda. If you wish to speak, please fill out a public comment form provided at the back table and give it to the city clerk. There is a 3-minute time limit on public comments. There will be no sharing or passing of time to another person. State law prohibits the council from discussing or taking actions brought up by your comments, and I will open public comment at 6:04. Do we have a request to speak?
Not for this portion, no.
Okay, thank you. I will close it at 6:05. The consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are taken as one action item, unless an item is pulled for further discussion here or at the end of action items. approval of all ordinances and resolutions to be read by title only. Do I have any items that need to be pulled from council? No? Do we have any requests to speak on the
Yes, on item 2.
2?
Yes.
Okay. So with that, I will make a motion to approve 1, 3, 4, 5, and item 6. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Santos,
Yes.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Carroll.
Yes. Item 2, ratification of warrants dated August 30th, 2018. We have a request to speak on this?
Yes.
All right.
If you open the public comment period, I'll call the speakers.
All right. So I will open the public comment on item 2 at 6:06.
Thank you. First speaker is Libby Yermovic.
Libby Romovic, City of Beaumont. On June 5th, the Beaumont Finance and Audit Committee committed fraud or attempted to by having Doug McDougall pretend that he was a Gatsby trainer and that he forged the capital asset report. And then the city approved the capital asset report. City Manager Todd Parton claimed that he hired Don McDougall. But I did a public records request and there are no records of hiring Don McDougall. There's no records of communication, there's no contract, there's no receipt, there's no invoice. Now you're paying him $3,500. How did you get him a check for $3,500 if he never produced an invoice, if you don't have a card from the man? Why would you pay a light bulb salesman? Why would you hire a light bulb salesman, Todd Parton? That's kind of like hiring a Parks and Rec director to be your assistant city manager after you rip off the Parks and Rec department for $13 million, huh? And then you cheat the soccer association. It's kind of the same thing. When I did a public records request for the documents to show who denied that they knew this man, Don McDougall, that this council approved something that you don't even know what you approved. Your city clerk says there is no written communication. She doesn't actually do public records request. That's what I got back. So we're going to do it again, a public records request to every single elected and appointed official. And since no one knows the law in the state of California, let me tell you, you are either an elected or an appointed official. There is no gray area for your girlfriend, Parton. She is an appointed official. She is culpable for what she does. Did she hire him?
Next speaker is Judy Bingham.
Judy Bingham, 115 Minnesota. I believe Sharon Geiser is our treasurer, and I was just wondering if Sharon was able to find that invoice because it appeared on the warrants. Did you find that?
Wait, hold on. This is not a Q&A, this is public comment. So the member of the public can make their comments, and then afterwards, if the council or mayor directs staff to respond or comment, they can do so.
Well, I was just curious if anyone found that invoice, or did Todd Parton have to be reimbursed?
No other speakers.
All right. Would any of council like to respond to the agenda item? If not, I will ask if staff...
Mayor, I'd like to move to approve item number 2.
I'll second.
He worked so hard.
All right, catching up. Councilmember Santos,
Yes.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Yes.
Mayor Carroll.
Yes. Item 7. For item 7 regards the formation and election for the City of Beaumont Community Facilities District, number 2018-1. So now is the time for the duly noticed public hearing relating to the formation proceedings for the City of Beaumont Community Facilities District, number 2018-1. The public hearing and formation proceeding will be conducted for the City of Beaumont Community Facilities District, number 2018-1. And at this point, staff, did you want to introduce our speakers?
Yes, ma'am. So this is again, the formation of CFD number 2018-1. This is the Olivewood project that's located south of Oak Valley Parkway and then north of I-60 and then west of Potrero Boulevard. And then just a reminder that on August the 7th, the City Council adopted Resolution 2018-42, which declared the intention to form the district, which was the initial step in that process. And so this now carries forward to the completion for the creation of that CFD. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Heidi Sheppy with Webb to make a quick presentation for you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. So I have a quick presentation to go over what the step that we're on this evening for the formation of CFD 2018-1 Olivewood. So just to give you an additional Okay, so to recap the overview of the development, this is CFD 2018-1. It's for services, so it'll be financing public services for police and fire. And there is also a tax for maintenance, which it will be a contingent tax because the HOA will be currently maintaining. If they fail to do so, then the city would be able to do that maintenance. It's formerly the Heartland Development, which is now called Olivewood. Will be developed by William Lyon Homes into 981 single-family residences. And as Todd said, it's south of Oak Valley, north of the 60, and west of Potrero. This is the recorded boundary map. So following the resolution of intention, we had the boundary map recorded at the County of Riverside, and so that's been completed. That also gives you another idea of where it's located. So step one, as Todd mentioned, was completed on August 7th. That was the adoption of the resolution of intention. The second step is the one we're going over tonight, which is the public hearing and election, and it'll be the initial reading of the ordinance. To go into more detail on the process this evening, Brian Forbath is here with Stradling, and he'll go over that for you.
Good evening, Mayor Carroll, members of the council, Brian Forbath, Stradling, Yacht, Carlson, Routh. I think you've all been through the selection process several times here tonight. So just as we all know, the RSI, who is the owner of the property, is the sole owner of the property. There are no registered voters currently registered in the boundaries of the district. So therefore, underneath the Melrose law, it is a landowner election, pursuant to which each landowner will cast a vote in favor or opposed of the formation of the special tax. The landowners have also provided a waiver to waive certain election law proceedings to allow for an expedited election this evening. Additionally, there's also on file with the city clerk's office a certificate of the registrar of voters of Riverside County certifying that that there are no registered voters residing within the boundaries of the district. So therefore, it is a valid landowner election. So as we mentioned, the initial steps tonight are to open the public hearing, take public comment, see if there's any protests that would exist, and then move forward to form the district. The resolution forming the district would call an election to be held at that point in time. The landowners have submitted their ballots to the city clerk, And so at that point in time, they would open the ballots and then announce the results, and then you'd be asked to come back and certify the election results, and if it's in favor to introduce the ordinance authorizing the levy of the special tax. I'm here if there's any questions, and Heidi and I can answer any further questions or walk you through the process if you need it. Thank you.
Thank you. The public hearing related to the formation of CFD number 2018-1 is now open at 6:15. The council, we've now received the staff report, and that needs to be entered into the record. And do we have any requests to speak on this?
Yes, we do. Libby Yarmovic.
Olive World, formerly known as Heartland, Area 5. I'm so old, I can remember when Lloyd White sat out here in the audience and protested Heartland. I'm so old, I can remember when Lloyd White used to complain about so many houses being built because it was depreciating his property values. Lloyd White bought a house in 2008 for what, $440,000? And now it's worth $340,000. By the time Lloyd White finishes paying off his house, he'll have enough money to get a loan to move to Sun Lakes and live in a one-bedroom apartment, because that's how good the property values are doing. Why do people vote against their own best interest? I do not know. Does that sound legal? That the RSI voted for it already before you approved it? If the property owners voted for it and not some shell company, then they're responsible for the debt. In 1994, this city got a $10 million bond, $3 million of which went to Heartland Area 5. On that bond, you can see the property owners signed for that debt. They took the debt. They didn't push it off on the future developers. They took the debt themselves. What happened to that $3 million that Heartland got in 1995? That money's gone. It was embezzled, right? Where's Heartland's mitigation fees? They should have about $12 million in mitigation fees. There is no $12 million in mitigation fees for Heartland. You made a dirty deal, remember? Look at Nancy Carroll trying to think. You made a dirty deal. $3 million is all you took to develop 1,000 units in Heartland. And then you deposited that money in the general fund. And you wrote it out as an extra money in the general fund on your 2016 and your 2017 financial statements, the same $3 million. That's how dirty the city of Beaumont is.
No other speakers.
All right, thank you. At this time, are there any discussions from council? Councilmember White?
I have a couple comments and then some questions for Mr. Forbath. First of all, let's set the record straight here. I never spoke against homes in Heartland. I got up in council and spoke against a 7 million square foot warehouse that was going to go into Heartland. It had nothing to do with homes. I don't believe, and maybe this is why the speaker's not running for city council herself, but I don't believe that it's in the interest of the city for me to be voting based on my best interest. I believe that we were all elected here to vote on the best interest of the city. I have been against CFDs. I believe that developers should build their homes without funding CFDs for the infrastructure. I also did my best when I first got on council to explore the idea of changing that. The problem that we ran into is these development agreements that are 20 years old that require CFDs. If I remember correctly, this project, we amended or created a new developers agreement with the owners of this project. And at that time, we as a council decided that we were not going to issue a CFD for infrastructure or for mitigation fees. The CFD that we're considering tonight, and this is probably my question to Mr. Forbath, is for public safety, which is police and fire. It's something that the city had not ever done before. They had not had public safety on any of the CFDs that we're paying, and it's the reason that we are struggling to meet our debt as far as our obligations. And I think that as I've talked before about the annexation rules between the city and the county, as we build homes and as three people per home come in, we do not have enough money to pay for police and fire. So this is $440 annually per dwelling for police and fire, public safety. And I'll get into what the other $480 may be for maintenance services. Okay, so I think I've set the record straight for, and Mr. Forbath, I have some questions for you. So the $440 annually per dwelling unit is for public safety, and that has a 5% increase on it, correct?
Yeah, it's the greater 5% or CPI.
Okay, and that is to keep up with the cost of public safety as we move forward, correct?
Correct, in particular the pension costs that seem to be increasing dramatically.
Okay, and then the $480 annually per dwelling unit, for maintenance services, the HOA has, or the owner has agreed that the HOA will take care of maintenance for this project, correct?
Correct. That tax is essentially a contingent tax. So it comes into play if the HOA essentially defaults on its obligations to maintain those facilities, and so that the city isn't stuck on the hook maintaining those facilities for the benefit of the residents, that the city could then at that point in time come in and charge that tax in order to maintain those facilities.
So as long as the HOA and the homeowners members of the association are honoring their obligation to maintain the property, this will not kick in, correct?
That is absolutely correct.
If they were maintaining everything correctly and keeping it up to date, could the city force this part of the CFD on the HOA?
No.
Okay. If the HOA was at a point where they felt that they could not maintain the services properly, they could then come to council and ask for this to be activated?
It really comes into play, maybe Heidi can help me a little better than me on this, but it really only comes to play in the event that the HOA fails to do certain things to properly maintain it. So if the HOA was to do that, they would sort of affirmatively step away from their obligations, and that would put the onus on you if you wanted to levy the special tax.
Okay, and I would like for her to answer that, but real quick. Now let's go to her.
Okay.
So as I said, if the HOA came to the city and said, look, we're just not going to maintain these services for whatever reason, then the city would activate this feature, correct?
Yes, there's a section in the rate and method of apportionment which defines a failure to perform. So if the HOA, under any of these circumstances, there's 4 areas where they would be classified as having a failure to perform, then the city council would have the authority to vote to enroll the special tax. And then there's more details in here about how it can be remedied and certain time periods in which they have to remedy it before the tax is enrolled. So that's very specific as to how that would work. It doesn't specify whether or not they can come in and say, please enroll this tax. However, if they were going to do that, maybe there was a bankruptcy, that's part of failure to perform. Or if they were just unable to maintain a budget sufficient to provide those services, that's also considered failure to perform. So they would, you would have the ability to enroll that tax.
Okay, and in our other CFD areas, the rate per home is based on the square footage size of the home. Do either of these have that condition or that parameter?
No, the rate per based on square footage is generally speaking for the facilities component of the tax, whereas for your services tax, it's a calculation based on all of the services provided divided by number of units in the development, and then that is escalated on an annual basis at 2% or CPI, whichever is greater.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then I have just one last comment. I have never approved a development agreement that had a facilities component of a CFD, nor will I. So I just wanted to make that comment, and I'm done. Thank you.
Question, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yeah, so my question concerns the 90,000 that the property owners fronted to the city. So is that considered a part of the incidental expenses or the admin costs that have been fronted?
No, so those were costs that were fronted from the developer. They originally petitioned to have the city form a community facilities district to finance facilities here, but the property owners' demands were not in line with the desires of the city, the staff, in terms of moving this forward. And in particular, they wanted to finance fees, they wanted special tax escalators and other things that were not in accordance with the council's policies. And so the developers actually gone to the school district to get what they want on those matters, and are pursuing a CFD with the school district on overlapping the boundaries of this. And so the original deposit was put up by them in connection with those negotiations. They'll be entitled to a return of whatever deposit we have, but otherwise the costs of my costs and Webb's costs for being here and preparing all the documents will be paid out of that deposit.
Okay, so that was my question, it had to do with the admin costs.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, and we have an agreement on file somewhere that shows this made between city and the property owners?
There's a deposit that they made, yeah.
So it's just understood that it's used for admin costs?
There's a community facilities district application that they filled in,
Okay.
and with that, there was a deposit
Okay.
requirement, yeah.
And then once we show expenses minus, we send back the whatever's left, the balance, you said. Okay, and so that's in addition to the 30,000 that it shows here, the 430 plus 30 for admin? That's not even, that's what we're gonna be getting in, but that has nothing to do with the 90, correct? That's separate?
Correct. The 9,000 is a deposit to cover the professional fees associated with setting up, evaluating and setting up the CFD itself. And then there's the ongoing $30,000 administrative cost every year that you can levy up to $30,000 to cover administrative expenses in terms of administering the CFD
Okay.
year after year.
And then, the 431 is, of course, on build out. So it's good, it'll start much smaller then and go up towards that.
That's correct.
All right, is there any, well, he probably doesn't have time. That's good enough. Thank you.
Councilman?
I'm good, Mayor.
Councilman Hussain?
A small one on the concern on my side is the, more on the 2% CPI in there. Like to do a clarification. Is the 5% will be the max, or still floating the CPI a certain given time?
The maximum is the greater of 5% or the increase in consumer price index.
Okay.
The increase in special tax, for the increase of the police and fire taxes.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Has the city clerk received written protests to any of the matters addressed in this public hearing from any of the registered voters or landowners of more than 50% of the acreage located within Community Facilities District number 2018-1?
I have not received any written protests, but before we move on, I'll have you close the public hearing. We opened it earlier at
Okay, so
6:15.
we'll close the public hearing at 6:29
Thank
PM.
And I have 0 written protests.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I have 0 written protests.
All right. So the public hearing has been closed at 6:29 PM. And with that, I will read, do you want me to, this is a question for the city attorney, do you want me to read the adopt by title only, the full
Yes,
print
each
out?
one of them
Okay.
separately.
I will do that. A resolution, so this is for adoption by title only, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Beaumont, California, establishing Community Facilities District number 2018-1, Olive Wood Services of the City of Beaumont, authorizing the levy of a special tax therein, calling an election and approval, and authorizing certain actions related thereto, and proceed with the call for election within CFD number 2018-1. Adopt by title only a resolution of the City Council of the City of Beaumont with California acting in its capacity as the legislative body of the Community Facilities District number 2018-1, Olivewood Services of the City of Beaumont certifying election results. Approve first reading by title only, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Beaumont, California, acting in its capacity as the legislative body of the Community Facilities District number 2018-1, Olivewood Services of the City of Beaumont, authorizing the levy of special taxes.
So now you need to act on each one of them individually. So the first one's item 2. That's before you, that you just read.
All right, so can I just ask for approval on the first two, because it gets moved to the next reading, correct? There's a second reading of this, no?
Not on the resolutions, no.
All right.
That's just with the ordinance.
So we're.
So you're going to take
item
action
number
on
two.
item number 2, 7.2.
Okay, so I move to approve item 2 as it was read by the city mayor.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes. So item 3, I don't need to read it again, correct?
No.
I'll make a motion to approve item 7.3 as read by the mayor.
I'll second.
Could I just interject for just 1 second? So the second item that you adopted called the election, and so now the city clerk has the election results, and so if she could announce the election results, and then at that point in time, we'll ask you to come back and certify those election results with adoption of the next resolution.
All right.
So the first resolution calls for an election. So I have the ballots that have been casted here.
That smell?
And that means that the election is now closed. So with that, so each of the ballot propositions have been approved by more than 2/3 of the votes cast in the election for CFD number 2018-1. So with that, we can now entertain a motion to approve the second resolution certifying the results.
All right, thank you.
Should she announce the vote count? I don't think I heard that.
Announce the, I'm sorry.
The results, the
The
vote.
vote.
So it is, this is entitled to cast 176 votes. For Proposition A is marked yes, and Proposition B is marked yes. Do you want me to read each proposition on the ballot? Proposition A, shall a special tax with a rate and method of apportionment as provided in Resolution number 2018-42 of the City Council of the City of Beaumont be levied within CFD number 2018-1 Olivewood Services of the City of Beaumont to pay for the services, incidental expenses, and other purposes described in resolution, the previous resolution that we just read. Proposition B, for each year commencing with fiscal year 2018-19, shall the appropriations limit as defined by the subdivision H of Section 8 of Article 13B of the California Constitution for CFD District number 2018-1 Olivewood Services of the City of Beaumont.
Thank you. So with that, on item 3, we will certify, correct?
That's right.
Mr. Forbath? Okay, all right. So item 3, adopt by title only a resolution of the City Council of the City of Beaumont, California, acting in its capacity as legislative body of the Community Facilities District number 2018-1 Olivewood Services of the City of Beaumont certifying election results. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. On to item 4.
Well, you need to,
I'll do
you
the
need to
vote.
vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Councilmember Santos,
Yes.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Carroll.
Yes, thank you. Approve the first reading by title only. I will read it again, just for clarity. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Beaumont, California, acting in its capacity as the legislative body of Community Facilities District Number 2018-1, Olivewood Services of the City of Beaumont, authorizing the levy of special taxes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Do I have a vote, please?
Councilmember Santos,
Yes.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Carroll.
Yes. Thank you. Item 8, action items. Approval of all ordinance and resolutions will be read by title only. Item 8, award of professional services agreement to the Nadelson Dale Group Incorporated for the preparation of an economic development strategic plan in an amount not to exceed $74,750. We have a staff report by Mr. Warsinski.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. A little background is in July of this year, we published an RFP for an economic development strategic plan. The city has never actually had one of those, so this is a big moment in the city's future if we can go ahead and award this contract. Previous policies on economic development have been derived by the city council in an informal way and then sent down through the city manager to various members of staff that implement those policies. But we never had a holistic, data-driven plan to go off of that the community could provide input on, council provide input, staff, as well as professionals. So on August 9th, we received 4 proposals. We reviewed those and conducted an interview with the 2 most qualified firms. The evaluation team rated the Nadelson Dale Group as the top qualified firm based on their previous experience in preparing over 25 strategic plans for cities and counties, many of which were within Southern California. The company's most recent strategic plan was completed earlier this year in Palm Desert, and they're wrapping up the most recent one, which is in the city of Camarillo. The scope of the work is very lengthy. It's probably a 6-month process, 6 to 7th month process. I tried to consolidate the lengthy scope onto 5 simple bullet points. So those are listed in front of you today. Basically, review and analysis of existing data, labor force characteristics, sales revenue, and other economic data. A review and analysis of the city's SWOT analysis, and kind of a refreshing or an updating on the one that was currently performed to directly assess what the competitiveness of the city of Beaumont is with the neighboring region. There's going to be a detailed analysis of demographic trends, forecasts, socio-factors, economic factors, financial indicators for inclusion in that strategic plan. And then lastly, you'll get a customized locally economic development strategy setting forth goals and objectives for taking advantage of the opportunities that the city has and solving economic development challenges within the city as well as the region. It will include strategic or suggested activities, projects and programs, and objectives to implement goals to set forth that strategy for the city and staff. There will be a short-term implementation plan that identifies issues and items which require action in the short and long term to accomplish some of those goals and objectives laid out by the City Council. One of the key things that staff really liked about the Nadelson Dale Group is they introduced this concept that we didn't necessarily ask for in the RFP, and that was this Economic Development Summit. And they have performed this numerous times with their clients in the past in development of their strategic plans. I could do a decent way of summarizing it, but I'll defer that summary for Mr. Dale's presentation. If you have any question of him, he is here. The proposed breakdown of the fees are as follows for the contract. There's a base bid of $72,250, reimbursable cost at $2,500, and that brings the not to exceed cost of the contract to $74,750. This was budgeted in the fiscal year 2018-19 budget. And staff does recommend that City Council award the professional services agreement with the Nadelson Dale Group for the preparation of the Economic Development Strategic Plan in an amount not to exceed $74,750. And I can answer any questions, and like I said, Mr. Roger Dale is here representing the firm. Thank you.
Did you want Mr. Dale to just answer questions, or is he?
If you would like a quick summary, I'm sure he can provide that off the top of his head. He doesn't have a formal presentation. I asked him to keep it brief, so if you have questions of him, I'm sure he can answer.
Feel free, and then we'll probably bring you back with some questions.
So good evening, Mayor Carroll, members of the council. I'm Roger Dale with the Nadelson Dale Group. We very much appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening and to potentially do this work for the city. There really are several reasons why it's important for a community to pursue economic development and to do it in a systematic way like we're proposing to do through this strategic plan. It's really about creating opportunities for all the stakeholders in the community to thrive economically. And that would include specific things like creating better job opportunities, higher paying job opportunities to match the demographics that are growing and changing in Beaumont. It would also include opportunities to continue to improve the commercial services that are available to your residents in terms of retail and other businesses that provide a higher quality of life in the community. And then very importantly, it establishes a strong fiscal base for the city itself. And really, we look at this type of an investment as something that should pay for itself in the way of increased economic benefits to the community and to the city as a fiscal agency. So those are the basic goals, and as Mr. Warzinski mentioned, the city has not had a formal plan previously, and this provides an opportunity to be more systematic about it so that the council direction, staff's implementation of that direction can be focused on consensus-derived goals and objectives over approximately a 5 to 10 year period. And as part of that process, there are really two things that I think we bring to the table. We first of all will do our own market research on what we think the opportunities are for job growth and real estate development and retail sales, and what that could potentially mean to the city in terms of economic benefits and fiscal benefits. So there's a technical research process that we've done for many communities around the state and some out of state. And there's also our background in this has given us ideas about what are the best practices for communities to pursue economic development. And one of the things that Mr. Warzinski mentioned is that we have especially found effective is a very comprehensive stakeholder engagement process that we call the Economic Development Summit. And this is intended to be a broad-based participation process phased over 3 meetings where all the participants would come to all 3 meetings and work very strategically with us to identify what the opportunities are and to figure out what the specific roles that the city and its staff can pursue to help take advantage of those opportunities. One of the key benefits we found with other clients is that successful implementation of economic development really often involves partnerships between the city and the development community, the city and the larger community, and other private and public organizations that can be your partners in pursuing economic development. That's very efficient in the way that it helps you to leverage your own investment with the resources from other entities. And this summit process is a way to begin to strengthen those partnerships. And I know that you already do this to some extent, and the idea here is to build on that, to build more trust in the broader community, to strengthen those partnerships, and to have workable partnerships for implementing the strategies that we define. And at the end of the day, we want our work to be very practical. This is going to define some very specific action steps for the city to take, It's going to be realistic in terms of resources. We're not going to recommend things that there are no resources to implement, but very practical things you could do within available resources that you can expect near-term results from. So we really look forward to the opportunity of working with you and your staff and your community, and would welcome any other questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. I'm going to see if there are public comments. Do we have public comments on this item?
Yes, we do.
Okay. We will probably call you back for questions, but thank you. I will open public comment at 6:45.
Libby, you're on Rick.
How many times has Kyle Wazinski or Rebecca Deming or Elizabeth Urtiaga stood in front of this council with a $75,000 or $175,000 contract for a consultant? Why don't you hire staff? For $75,000, you could hire somebody for a whole year. What are you laughing at, Lloyd? Have you ever run a business in this town, Lloyd? No. No, you have not. Never. You've never run a business, period. You complain.
Oh.
You complain that there's no movie theater. Did it ever occur to you to open a movie theater? No. You have teenage kids. Why don't you open a theater or something to put your kids to work? You don't know what it's like to have a business in this
Are you
town.
on topic for this item?
Absolutely.
Yes, this is about
Stay on
economically
topic.
development.
You're talking about,
We're talking about economic development. What do you know about
This
it?
is not a personal questioning on who's owned a business. It's on economic development. Go
Do you
ahead.
own a business? No, you don't. You don't own a business in this town. You
Go
don't
ahead.
shop in this town. You wear very nice clothes, but they're not purchased in this town.
You're not going to stay
How
on
can any of
topic.
you do economic development when you don't know anything about it?
Do you own a business in
Over
this
and
town?
over and over. No, Judy Bingham owns multiple
Got it.
businesses in this town. Have you ever asked her? How many times have you approved
can we take a recess?
Economic development.
from plants?
This is off topic.
From Cherry Valley.
We'll take a recess. Thank
Yeah,
you.
take a recess. You still have to give me my 3 minutes. Take your recess.
off topic.
If you know it's a phony contract, why you get upset? Just give
Did you
it
get
to
the
her.
water yet? Oh, thank you so much.
Give me some water. Give that girl some water to go with her fancy clothes.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Over here.
Oh my God, don't say nothing about
Nancy, you have
Is he just straddling? I was just going to send him to straddling.
To his attention, so we can take care of it.
I'll send you his last name. Did Brian already?
Yeah.
Okay, that was quick.
He's going on
Thank you.
vacation, so.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
How are you, Sharon?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Look at you. Actually, I'll
Awesome, thank you.
All done. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks.
I just got to see you.
I was gonna have to overnight that.
Oh,
No, I don't have to. I saw it. Am I physical? I thought it was gonna be in here, and then I opened it. Two different ones. I'll double check my mailbox and see.
But we should make sure that gets in the file.
Yeah.
Election certificate,
With it, yeah.
Yeah, just as the record. Thanks.
Right, okay.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, no problem.
Take 10.
That was a bad move.
Mike's wrong.
Right, that's what I did. I just had someone that I knew was back there. Yeah.
All right.
Drive somewhere.
Magic of man. Aw, thank you.
Kicking my tissue box away.
This is First Street. We're over here on First Trail. There's nothing. There's nothing.
Oh my gosh, so where'd you get this?
Just
Thank you, Mayor.
I didn't get that. You probably know all.
All right. It's white.
I'm just trying to drag this out because I see shorter time.
Because we had big money on that, too.
Yeah.
It's just hard as...
I was reading the summary. It's one of the ones for the session. Libby didn't want one of my signs. Correct, yeah. I always hope that more than half.
Okay.
Okay, we're back from recess at 6:52. We will continue with item 8. We were at public comments. Do we have any other public comments on item 8?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'm going to open it up to council now for questions of staff or Mr. Dale. So, Councilmember Santos, do you have any?
Let's start.
I'd just like to flip it back and forth. I don't want everybody to be.
Actually, I have a few questions on Kyle regarding the proposals. There's 4 proposals in there. Have we received those other three candidates in there? And there are also other qualifications and all those stuff, because I just got your RFP in here.
Yes, sir.
And I read it and everything, and I haven't seen any other proposals in there.
Yeah, so the city's policy on RFPs is that they come in through a key staff member that's released it to the public. It's always attention to someone, and then that person either participates in an evaluation committee or delegates it to other people. So typically it's a group of around 3 to 5 staff members or staff members and outside agencies, all depending on what the nuances of the RFP are. This one was reviewed by 3 city staff members. I was one of those. And when we go through those, we evaluate them based on the scoring criteria contained within the RFP. And then we shortlist some of them to go through an interview process. Then we set up an interview. They come in, we score those.
Yeah.
And then the committee basically looks at the top qualified firm based on their scores and moves forward with negotiations on a contract, adding to or retracting items from the scope. And then we take the top qualified firm's contract to City Council for award. So the public, or the proposals from the other firms are not publicly available until after the RFP is either 1, awarded, or 2, rejected.
So
that's why they're not contained within the staff report packet.
So you don't provide any the 3 bidders in there information?
Not
Or
for the staff report.
Okay. Okay. And then my next question is the breakdown on the 74,000 on that side.
Sure.
And, it doesn't say more on the cost on that. It's only one lump sum number in there, 72,000, and then you got the 2,500, expenses in there. And then down below, it says that, we are, around 5,000 something. I mean, I'll look at.
Yeah, so I can explain that for you.
Yeah,
So
please.
as part of the Nadelson Dale Group's proposals, we have their formal proposal on what they were going to do, their references, their case examples from other cities, as well as their proposed scope for this project. I have that. I also have their fee proposal, which was reviewed as well as negotiated. So I have that as well. As part of the process, we did not include it in the staff report, and that's been our policy for the last couple years or so, is we don't include the proposal nor the fee breakdown as part of the staff report, but obviously it will be, I think it's part of the overall contract that gets signed. It's one of the attachments on there, so that would be publicly available for review. The quick breakdown, because I have it in front of me, is the analysis, the review, and the composition of the data is around 7,200. The SWOT review and analysis is around 5,000. That's because we've kind of already done one before. So they're not starting from scratch. We're starting with a point. We're refreshing that analysis. The analysis of the business industry sectors, commercial land, industrial land demand is around 30,000. The preparation of the strategic plan and the implementation plan is around 17.5. And then the various meetings and community engagement was 12,200. So that gives you that rough 72,000 number, and I'm rounding a little bit. But one of the other things that Roger had explained to us is they quoted a number of meetings through the process. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but let's say it's 10. If the city council or staff or the economic development committee say that 10's insufficient and we need 15, it's still the 74,750.
Okay. My next one is the staff estimate costs in there. On the
sorry.
On the accounting side, where do you account that? I know Milan is over here, so probably I could address that to us, especially on my side, so I could see that on the Milan's report.
Sure. There's a certain staff and overhead cost per hour that we use to populate these dollar amounts. I think it's around 220, 225 for a staff personnel here at City Hall with their salary plus benefits plus overhead. So we basically reach out to the 3 people that were involved in the process, plus myself, who developed the entire RFP, answered questions and all that stuff. And we look at how much time was involved in preparation of the RFP, publishing it, scoring all of them, and doing the interviews. And then we just times that by that 225.
That's nice to to hear from you that we have a job cost established.
Yeah, so that represents the 5625, and then staff time for legal services is I think around an hour or so, and that's their review of our proposal prior to publishing it, as well as review of the contract after the standard contract is massaged into whatever type of service is being performed.
Okay. Thank you. Can I ask one more question, Mayor?
Yeah.
Okay. On there. I know, I don't know if I be bouncing to another line of strategic system you have in here. I haven't heard the IT on like the fiber project or something. Probably, I'm talking about on that. Design the fiber optic system within the city, so we could really accommodate more youngest people and then even the older people to use on the system. And I haven't see your plan yet, so that's why I'm just listening to you, and you didn't address that, if that's part of the your plan.
We are not an engineering firm, so we don't design the physical infrastructure.
Yeah.
However, what we will do that relates to that, we are going to be doing what we call a competitive assessment, where we look at how Beaumont compares to other cities and communities that are competing against you for the same types of business opportunities, and compare their infrastructure. And that's just one component we look at, but it is included as infrastructure, including broadband. How competitive or non-competitive are your facilities or your infrastructure compared to the other places that you're talking about? And that can then be a basis for defining what the needs are here that could then be the basis for more of a physical infrastructure or an engineering type plan to implement that. So to answer your question, we do not design broadband infrastructure, but we will help to identify what the needs may be in order for you to be competitive.
Very good. Thank you.
Councilmember Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Orsinski, I'm with you. I think this is an exciting time for Beaumont. Personally, I've been contacted by people interested in developing commercially within the city. So this is, I think, good timing, fortunately for us. So I do think it is a plus. So Kyle indicated that he thinks this would be about a 6-7 month process. Is that pretty close to what we think is going to occur?
Yes, and that is partly driven by the fact that we're very thorough about this community stakeholder outreach.
Okay.
And this summit process that we mentioned earlier is spread over 3 meetings, that there needs to be some time between the meetings because we're feeding the group our research as part of the agenda for those meetings. So we'll come to the first meeting and show them some of the preliminary research we've done. We'll get their input on that. It's very important for that to happen so we get a kind of a local confirmation or reality check on the data. Then we come back some weeks later when we're further along in the process and we've got different topics that are more, we're kind of progressing to getting more specific and more detailed about this is the information we've got. Now what can we identify that the city can be doing strategically to take advantage of these opportunities and begin to implement action items. So the timing largely is because of that need to space out those meetings and thoroughly reach out to the stakeholders.
So a couple things on that public outreach. One is I think that's great because that's been one thing that this council has really pushed, is to get community involvement. The concern that I have is sometimes we have some folks from the public that are, to put it nicely, I'll put counterproductive. And so those are the individuals that I would hate to have ruin this opportunity for other businesses that have a chance to voice their input and have constructive input. The other concern that I have is we struggle getting a lot of involvement. So we don't really get the public involvement that we anticipate or that we think we would get. What do you do to try to ensure that we get as much public involvement or business involvement as possible in these summits, because they're critical to the city and the city's success?
So that will be really the first thing on our agenda, is to work with the staff, and as if the council likes to provide input as well, we're glad to work with you to identify who are the stakeholders that should be invited to participate in this process. And what we will typically start with is we'll give you give the staff a list of not names of people, but categories of people, like school districts, transportation agencies, utility companies, real estate brokers. We don't know the names, but we know the categories of people that we would normally like to see attend those meetings. These meetings are not necessarily intended to be general public meetings, although if you'd like it to be that way, we can. But they're usually kind of a focus group that you have identified as your core stakeholders that, as you said, can be focused on the real issues and keep it that way. That being said, if there are other individuals who maybe are not able to commit for 3 meetings or don't necessarily fit that mold, we're glad to reach out with them on a one-on-one basis, a phone call or a meeting if that's important. And we also anticipate a lot of interaction with the council in a study session format, or if you'd like one-on-one meetings, we can do that as well. Whatever suits your preference as far as how we interact with the city. As Kyle mentioned, we absolutely will not limit the number of meetings or number of times that we need to come out here. That's just part of the process. Doesn't affect the cost to the city, but it's just what we consider necessary to do a good job on the work product.
Great, thank you very much. And I do appreciate the fact that you started out by mentioning some of the benefits to this, because I think that's important to hear as well. So thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I have just a few. So, I sit on the Economic Development Committee here for the city, so I know that our members are going to really be excited to participate. This is kind of something we've been talking about for a while, and it's exactly kind of what they're looking for. And I've missed a few meetings. I'm not sure if you discussed it with them ahead of time, but this is definitely the direction we've been looking at. And my first question was dealing with the summit, so that was well answered. Thank you, everybody. My question is, and I don't know if it's really staff or you, but we have a general plan update. We've got the communication and strategic plan. Now we have the economic development strategic plan. So how do we get all these working together? Making sure one hand knows what the other's doing so that we have a consistent type theme between everybody.
It's a good question. He's reaching for his microphone, so I'm going to defer to him.
Go for it.
We try?
Yeah, we gladly talked about this.
We definitely have. Because we had the same conversation internally when we were thinking about putting the RFP out. It's, do we wait for the general plan to be done? Do we wait for the branding and marketing campaign to be done? Or do we run this now? Or what should we do? And we decided that the general plan is around a year and a couple months through the process. So the land use designations have been set. We kind of know what our marching orders are in terms of staff on which areas of the city are going to be designated what. Right now, we're just waiting on the environmental document. So much of the planning work, the economic development work, the fiscal model has been completed and is in a draft form. So that's kind of all behind us. So now we can prepare the community and our consultant with what that general plan is going to look like. So we don't necessarily need to wait for the environmental because all the pieces that build the environmental have been completed. And then the communications piece is another thing that is very nice and a great time to be going through it concurrently, because one of the key components of that is doing a poll of the community on how they feel about the community now. Like what's the theme, what's the mood in the community, and how we can better brand everything. So by the time we're done or nearing the finish line with the branding, we're going to be nearing the implementation steps and the development of the strategic plan. So we can tie in some of that branding and marketing components into the different goals and objectives that are set forth in this thing. And the branding doesn't need to wait for this because this is all data-driven and community-driven. The branding is just going to be the nice tagline and the logo and how we're going to go about restoring the faith and how people think about the city. So hopefully that answers.
That does. I just, as long as, and even that your idea that you're communicating always shows me that you're discussing, because there's going to be an orchestra leader here somewhere. Someone's going to have to say, okay, this is what happened, and that ties in over here, and you're making sure that we have.
Well, and the general plan update looks at generalized land uses, right? So it designates an area for different types of commercial activities. And so what this effort will do now is, because the plan says overall you've got a certain balance of land uses, right, that are sustainable. Now we can look at that and say, okay, how do you then look at what types of uses should go into those, industrial areas, into those commercial areas? And then that's where this plan is going to be very specific, because it'll begin to tell us what our targets really are for those areas. And then the regional context that Mr. Dell's going to do for us will then give us an idea about what's happening, what are we competing against out there within the region, what kinds of things can happen here that complement things that may happen in some of our neighboring communities or, that we communicate with within the region. So this really gives us more detail that begins to help us figure out how to fill that in, because the follow-on effort from the general plan update will be zoning. So this helps us dial in and understand how to zone, what types of conditions, what types of buildings, we can expect, or types of things that we need to begin to incorporate into our development standards.
Okay, perfect plan. And my last question just had to do with a little bit of housekeeping. So don't I remember seeing copies of the RFP brought to the council on the staff report when we're getting ready to approve? Or am I thinking of something else? Because I remember, is it for Public Works I'm thinking of? So I remember reading what the person that bid for what they put in, what they were gonna do, and, you know, after you vetted all the four.
I think it's been done a couple different ways. I had it ready to be included in this package, and when I reached out to the clerk's office and the city manager's office, they had let me know that the policy was not to include the formal proposal and the fee estimate
Right.
for, I think it was the public records purpose, is that it would be out there prior to an formal action being taken on the agreement, one way or another. So that's why it was not included this time, and it may have been included prior, but I believe, at least what I was told, is that we're not going to be including them.
And then how
from then
about
on.
the scores? Because we used to have scores too. Is that off? I'm thinking of something else as well.
That was probably another older reiteration or an older policy that we're doing.
The reason I ask is because
Yeah.
when you do have comments of people saying, well, you know, you're gearing it towards this firm or this firm, you know, we have some way of saying, well, we've done our due diligence and looking through the different firms.
I have all of the score sheets from the individual graders, so those are publicly available.
So there's backup docs then.
I have everything, yes.
Well, I don't know if we want to entertain that somewhere down the future of having some sort of a consistent policy, but for now, we're doing fine, as long as there's something there. That's okay. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember White?
So if for some reason we did not approve this contract with this vendor tonight, we wouldn't have to go throughout the whole RFP process because we've kept all of that, the confidentiality of whose bid was how much and all of that. And if we did have to go through another RFP process, we would also have a problem with that.
In this RFP, we put the technical RFP out there, and we put the evaluation criteria in the RFP. Under separate cover, costs were submitted. So we didn't open those up for those that didn't make the finalist list. So, you know, so we do have additional, we got a couple other folks that were deemed, you know, very competitive in this process. And so if this contract didn't happen, or, you know, we couldn't come to final terms on a contract, we could look at the next bidder and begin to discuss with them and bring that back to you. You could reject all bids. So tonight you could say, I'm going to reject this and all bids, and direct us to go back and start another RFP process as well. So you have those options available to you if that's where you'd like to go.
And to speak to Mr. Laura's comment, the community engagement, I thought the same concerns that you have. I'm not really worried about the negative comments anymore, because you can see it doesn't matter to them that we're moving forward without them. So, they have never been involved in any of the community engagement that we've done in a positive approach. So it's only been when they can voice their negativity. So I have a different question for you. It says here that you just completed the Palm Desert plan.
Yes.
Why does Palm Desert need a plan? How did you, I mean, they seem to have a pretty good economic strategy. How did you improve that economic strategy?
Well, they do have a very good track record, you're correct, and they've developed a great community. I think they're at a stage where they are getting built out on land and know that their remaining options for how the city will grow are kind of narrow at this point, so they want to make sure that they get it right in that last stage of their development.
Wow.
And they also do have some challenges. They would like to see more higher paying jobs in the community, and that was a focus of our plan, and one of the recommendations there that they, I believe, are already implementing is a business incubator that would focus on high-tech activities, which are already starting to happen in the Coachella Valley, so that it's a great opportunity there, and that was a partnership with the city and the Coachella Valley Economic Partnership and the college districts, so great opportunity to just kind of emerge from that. Another area that they're very concerned about is they have for a long time been sort of the retail center of the Coachella Valley. And, you know, we all know that shopping malls are being challenged right now just because of the way the retail market and industry is. And they want to be proactive about figuring out what's going to be the next generation of that major property there if the trend continues in the retail industry. So those are some of the reasons they did it. I would say in their case, it was more about a fine tuning. It wasn't recreating the whole community, but just being proactive and staying on the edge of some of these issues that I think they're smart to do.
Thank you. That gives me some insight into what you're looking at. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions, the business incubator actually is a pretty good segue because I had made a note to use that as an example to ask you about. What I'd like to know is if you're looking at us as a city and you look at expanding us economically, do you look to more of where we want to be versus the competitiveness of just the circle of cities around us? For instance, we're about 47,000. Do you look at like a city of 75,000 or 80,000 that's thriving economically, and do you figure how to build us to that model versus looking at us just the cities that surround us?
I think it can be both. We will work with the staff to identify what the other places are that we want to compare you to. And typically, we will include a mix of some communities that are right in your region that in some ways are direct competitors, and maybe in other ways, as Mr. Parton mentioned, could be complementary to what you're doing, or you could complement what they're doing and kind of find Beaumont's niche. So that would be one thing, is to just identify places that are in your immediate area that a business is coming into the region. They're going to look at Beaumont, and they're also going to look at Moreno Valley, et cetera. And how do the two stack up, or three, or however many communities they're looking at? Where are you stronger or weaker compared to those other places? When we do that, there's a couple benefits to that. First of all, where you're strong, that can become part of your branding message. And that's another good reason why all this it's very helpful that you're doing all this at the same time, because this can feed into that branding program, identifying what the marketing messages are, the selling points are about Beaumont that you want to get the word out about. The other thing is, if we identify weaknesses, they may be things that you can do something, at least over time, to address, and that can be part of your long-term strategy. It could include, like, for example, the broadband infrastructure. So things like that we can identify. Right now, you're a little bit behind the curve potentially on something. What can you do to fix that? The other thing, like you suggested, Mayor, is looking at what we would call an aspirational place that you would aspire to be like. That might not even be in Riverside County. That could be somewhere else that just happens to be a good fit in terms of what Beaumont could become 5 or 10 or 15 years down the line. And again, that would kind of help us to identify, okay, if you want to get from here to there, what are the steps that the community needs to invest in over the next 5 or 10 years to put that into place? And so again, we'd be looking for input from you as well as the staff on what you already might know about. These are our competitors, or these are the places that we would like to aspire to being more like, and we'll include all of those in the analysis.
Thank you. I see that as one of the great values that you can bring to us. We have terrific staff, but you've seen that seeding and growth in other communities, and you can bring that cross-pollination of ideas to us for what we should be aspiring to, blended with who we are and what our assets are already. So I think that's critical. I have a question for you. When you've worked with other cities, you probably have seen points where if the city had worked more effectively with you on these certain points, then the whole application of your consultancy and your knowledge would have worked so much better if these certain points in the cooperative arrangement would have been done better. So what are some of those potential failure points? And if you could give us a message on how we would be the most effective city that would ever work with you, what are the things that you would hope that we would do better working with you?
Well, and I have every reason to believe that this is going to be a great fit for us and for you as far as working together. We've already talked about the area that I think potentially needs the most attention, and that's identifying who the stakeholders are that should be part of this process. And maybe that means some who should not be part of the process, but it's a process where we're going to really rely on local input on, as I said, we can identify typically these are the types of categories of people that we would expect to see, but we need to filter that through your local insight about people who absolutely need to be included because they're important stakeholders in the community. And I think the sooner that we can work together to identify that, the better, because that really is the foundation of the whole process, and we can be much more efficient as soon as that's in place. I think the other area is just getting out, once we've identified who to invite. It helps if the invitation doesn't come from us as a consultant that they don't know, but from staff or a council member. That really is helpful to get support in getting buy-in from people to come and attend a series of meetings that they might not initially understand why it's so important, but I think together we can show them that it's worth their investment of time.
Thank you. Now, when you do the stakeholders and the focus group approach, I really appreciate that you may not be choosing them or you may not know who they are, but I appreciate your knowledge and expertise being applied to the process. Mm-hmm. The reason being that, if you took any one of us council members or whatever and said, who would you like to see as part of that stakeholder group that shared with you the ideas of where the city should be going, you get different answers from every one of us. And you are the one that can help sort of apply that discretion to make sure that, we don't pick somebody that just happens to have talked to us the most about where the city should be going, but you're the one that will help us to make sure that we have the highest quality of stakeholder and focus group, or whatever you want to term it, as input. Because in my mind, if we don't do that and reach for the highest quality in that, the process won't produce the best results. So, thank you.
Thank you.
With that, do I have a motion to award a professional services agreement for Nathan Dale Group for the preparation of the Beaumont Economic Development Strategic Plan in an amount not to exceed $74,750?
Second.
That was a motion and a second. Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9, resolution of authorization for the execution of the certifications and assurances for the California State of Good Repair Program. The staff report from Ms. Gibbs.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight you have an item before you for a grant. It's for the California State of Good Repair Program. It's part of Senate Bill 1. We previously received funds in fiscal year 18-19 in the amount of $49,885, and City Council approved that grant. 17-18 for $66,478. And City Council approved that grant to modernize the vehicle maintenance facility located at 550 California Avenue. We're in a new cycle now, and for this fiscal year, the eligible amount is $49,885, and staff is requesting that City Council approve that for Phase 2 of the modernizing of the vehicle maintenance facility. The mechanics currently repair and service the city's fleet outside in the elements without cover from excessive heats, winds up to 80 miles an hour per hour gusts, and rain or snow. The existing structure is made of unreinforced masonry and is not adequate in size for the larger vehicles like our 40-foot buses that we have in our fleet. And we're not able to maneuver the vehicles inside the building and out of the elements. This project will improve the vehicle's maintenance mechanics' ability to quickly and safely service all vehicles, including grounds maintenance trucks and police vehicles. And that can happen regardless of the weather conditions, ensuring more protection and increasing our productivity in our fleet maintenance. In order to proceed with securing the funds for the project, though, the city must submit a recipient certifications and assurances form, an authorizing resolution by City Council, and an authorizing agent signature authority, all of which are attached to your staff report. The fiscal impact for this, staff estimates the cost to prepare this resolution and application is $225. Only awarded grant funds will be used for this project, and there will be no direct fiscal impact to the general fund. So staff recommends approve by substitution of title only resolution of authorization for the execution of the certifications and assurances for the California State of Good Repair Program. And number 2, authorize staff to execute and submit all required accompanying documents listed to complete the application for the grant funds. We actually went down and took pictures of the current facility to give you an idea of how dilapidated the vehicle maintenance facility is. And so this is standing at the gate on California, and you can see one of our 16 passenger buses there on the right. It doesn't fit inside the building. And if you, there's a police car there, and if you scroll through those, Nicole, you'll see some other various angles of what we're facing. To the right and to the left, they're what we call carports, and right now staff's parking their own vehicles in under those carports because they're not very well made. So we can't get any of the buses in those areas at all. The equipment and tools and lifts are all secured in this open area, which technically should be where we are fixing the vehicles. And then that's a view out looking to the street from inside the shop.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor, I'd like to move to approve the recommended council actions as written here and as read by Elizabeth. So I don't need to read them again.
Just want to double check. We don't have any public comments, right? Okay. I'll second that. I will second the motion to approve by substitution of title only, resolution of authorization for the execution of the certifications and assurances for the California State of Good Repair Program, and also to authorize staff to execute and submit all required accompanying documents listed above to complete the application for the grant funds.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Thank you. Yes.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Item 10, Military Banner Recognition Program. We have a staff report by Ashley Strong.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Beaumont respects the enormous sacrifices made by those serving in our armed forces, and currently the city participates in the annual Veterans Expo, honors deceased servicemen in the Beaumont Veterans Memorial at City Hall, and will soon begin hosting an annual Veterans Day ceremony. In addition to these events, staff is proposing the initiation of a military banner recognition program to allow the community to honor and pay tribute to the courage, commitment, and heroism displayed by our active duty service personnel. The proposed program will honor Beaumont residents and their immediate family members who are actively serving our country in the United States Armed Forces. Banners are proposed to be installed twice a year in May and November and will be on display for a minimum of 2 years at the following locations: Beaumont Avenue between 5th Street and Oak Valley Parkway between Palmer Avenue and Highland Springs, and 1st Street between Pennsylvania Avenue and Highland Springs. Of these locations, it will provide up to 298 spaces for banners. All of the recommended pole locations are the property of Southern California Edison and will require a license agreement for their use. The cost per banner is estimated at $250 to $300, inclusive of the banner, the bracket system, and the installation. To show the city's appreciation for our service persons, it's recommended that the city install the program at no cost to the applicant with optional donation or sponsorship opportunities available. The recommendation is to approve the initiation of the military banner program as presented and accept the license agreement with Southern California Edison for the use of their poles. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We don't have any public comment on this.
We do not.
I think excellent write-up. Very thorough. I really appreciate it. If there's no questions by council, I will make a recommendation to approve initiation of military banner recognition program as presented, unless there are questions.
I have just one quick one, that's all.
You go ahead.
The banners, I know that they're up for 2 years, is it? And they're designed and built to last the 2 years, or there's not going to be a need to replace them?
There should not be a need to replace them unless we have a significant wind event. There may be a situation where we might have to replace some. If any of the banners become damaged, depending on how we proceed with the program, either with a contract or with city staff, if it's with a contract, they will come out, take down the banner, replace it, repair or clean the damaged banner, and present it to us so that we may present it to the applicant or family member.
Perfect.
I will withdraw my motion because we have another question.
Well, I just have one- You can still
All
keep it.
right.
Just
Go
one more
ahead.
question. Do we have a maximum number that we're allowing? I just hate to have a budget that's, you can have so many people apply and we can't cover it all, so are we having to
Well,
just kind
if
of?
you were to approve the 3 locations proposed from in each segment of those, you would have nearly 300 banners at up to $300 each, so.
Okay.
Councilmember White, do you have questions?
If it went up to 400, I think we're good with that. This is just active military, correct? No, I move to approve the initiation of the military banner recognition program as presented and to accept the license agreement with Southern California Edison for use of the poles.
You would be a second, she already.
We had
She
a
didn't make a
motion on
motion.
I think you
Yes, you did.
Councilmember Santos, do you have any comments?
You didn't.
She only got the first part. And she only said recommend.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It doesn't matter. Okay, so we have,
I'll second that.
okay, we good? Nicole, or did we
No,
lose you
that's
in
fine.
this?
That's fine.
Are you okay, Nicole?
Yes, and
All
I'll do
right,
roll call.
thank you.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes, thank you.
Good job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 11, approval of CAL FIRE invoice for April to June 2018 services with the staff report by Alana. There she is.
Hello, good evening. I bring to you the final billing we received for fiscal year 18 for the CAL FIRE operations invoice with the payment authorized by council. The total paid to CAL FIRE for the fiscal year will be below the budget that we had originally anticipated for the year for this particular contract. You were provided the entire contract. It's quite lengthy, but if you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
I just have one quick one there.
Councilmember Lara?
It's good to see that this is 6.5% under budget.
Yes.
Is it possible to roll this over into next fiscal year to help offset maybe any increases, or is that?
No, what happens is the budget in total will be closed at the fiscal year. If there is a positive balance for the general fund, then it will increase the net asset reserve that we then will hold. And then if we see a need and we have the ability to maintain something in the future, we can then dip into those reserves.
Thank you. No one has any questions, I'll make a motion.
Anyone?
No, I'm fine. Go ahead.
To approve invoice number 232727 in the amount of $598,000 $515.83.
Second.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes. Thank you. Item 12, provide direction to city staff regarding a new transportation uniform mitigation fee, TUMF, calculation policy proposed by the Western Riverside Council of Governments, WR. Staff report by our city manager.
And actually, in your council packet, under a copy of this memo, was actually a copy of the most recent WRCOG staff report pertaining to this program, it was defined here. But to put it in its most simplistic terms, the concept here was that WRCOG would become the agency that would calculate and collect TUMP fees for the development activity within each of its TUMP participating entities, which includes the various cities as well as Riverside County itself. In working through the process and kind of getting to the bottom of the staff report, you can see a letter from the WRCOG Legal Counsel, BB&K, which really kind of describes the processes that would need to happen should WRCOG determine that it would like to go ahead and implement this program. To this point, this has really been discussed at a policy level with various technical advisory committees. So it's talked to the managers group, it's talked to finance group, to the planners group, to the building officials group. I think there's a dog catchers group that, I'm just kidding.
They let them out this time.
Oh, they were left out, okay. So anyway, so it's gone through a variety of organizational committees that are out there. This program really cannot be implemented until the executive board actually takes action on it and decides to do it. Now, should the executive body determine that they want to go ahead and implement this program, then the next step in that process would be WRCOG now reaching out to all of its member agencies to talk about this project, this effort, how it would work, and get a feel for whether or not the agencies are willing to participate. In order to be able to implement this strategy, each entity would have to then agree to amend its TUMP ordinance to allow that process. The TUMP ordinance right now says it's on the city to remit payment for development activity pursuant to the TUMP fee and the Nexus report. And so then there's an audit, a monthly audit that occurs to determine whether or not we have accurately collected and remitted those fees that were out there. So in talking with WRCOG staff, I did talk to some senior staff on Friday, kind of walk through how they envision the implementation of this going. One of the things that they said is they've already got staff in-house today who are auditing, and they feel like they've got the ability, without hiring new folks, to be able to then take on the plan review as well as the fee calculation and fee collection processes. I think that the auditing process versus the evaluation collection processes are two very different operations. So that's one of the questions I would have administratively, operationally, management-wise is, okay, let's we'd have to take a step back and say, hey, let's walk through and see, okay, exactly how would you propose to do that? Here's what we do, and here's how we get that process. But again, ultimately, and if you look at the recommendation that the planning committee made, they basically said they would recommend consideration to the executive board of implementing this program with the caveat that it's subject to the voluntary participation by each of the entities that were out there, and that the next step in the process would be to, if this program were to proceed on, then to begin the outreach effort to begin discussing this with the various other cities. And those cities want to participate, then to facilitate work with them to make the ordinance amendments necessary to be able to get this implementation process. So this is really being presented to you tonight to see if you've got any questions or thoughts regarding the program. One of the things that's there is that, and was discussed with staff, is that there is no formal action the city would have to take not to participate in the program. But I did mention, that in our community that we would definitely have an official discussion in an open session with our council on whether we would participate should this program proceed forward. So take your comments, we'll forward those on. We'll do any additional research that y'all would like us to do. If this program does get approved at the executive board level, we'll definitely be coming back to you with an update on that and with any additional discussion we may need to have at that point. At this point, I really don't have a recommendation for you on this topic because there's some significant additional amount of work that we need to do to really kind of truly fully vet this all out. It's been a lot of moving parts here.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments on this?
We do not.
Okay. I will just share what the WRCOG meeting, this was brought up by staff, and then I'll just go ahead and open it up to any of the council. This was brought up by staff, and one of the objections, one of the concerns was that they were going to have to staff with more people to do this, which then would affect the cost of WRCOG to member agencies, and that there might be some redundancy of staff where cities were doing already part of the work for this, and to turn it over completely to WRCOG. There were some concerns about additional staff that would be needed once it was really kicked into gear. There was also another concern that was brought up about training, because one of the reasons WRCOG had for doing this was that they were feeling like it was a burden to have to train any changes in staff that occurred at the city level on how to properly report and audit the numbers in the process for this. There was a suggestion that was brought up that rather than to do it across the board with all of the member agencies, where this might apply to all member agencies, was to do a pilot program with one city where some of the cumbersome details that the city manager alluded to would be worked out and smoothed out, and then a results report would have been done on the findings for that, on how that might change the interaction of the staff of the two agencies, and how some of these different functions would be smoothed out, rather than to take it across the board to all the member agencies before it had been perfected, and before the results of it could be reported on to the executive board. So I'll just share those thoughts with you because they kind of add a little detail to what the city manager said. So with that, I will open it up to council. Council questions? Councilmember Sanders? Councilmember Law? I'm going this way again. I'll go this way next time.
So some of the concerns that I had, the County of Riverside went through the same thing, and some of the concerns I had was I felt that their initial request to have everybody in the program was overreaching. There's a WRCOG has a fee calculation workbook that's available online to help jurisdictions do the calculations. I do have concerns with their staff having the background or the knowledge to calculate fees. In order to calculate the fees, they'd need a copy of the plans. They don't really go into detail as to what plans they're looking for. So if you make a copy of a large commercial industrial, which is typically what they'd probably need to see, those can get rather expensive and become burdensome on the developer. I think staff here has the ability to calculate the fees correctly. They can use the workbook for reference. And then WRCOG's available for questions if there are questions on details. The other concern that I had is if they didn't hire additional staff, because if you had a lot of jurisdictions participating, then if they didn't hire the additional staff to keep costs down, then developers may be looking at multiple days and getting their fee calculation back. Typically, developers will choose to put this fee off to prior to final or certificate of occupancy. When they're ready for certificate of occupancy or final, they don't want to wait an extra 2 or 3 days to have their fees calculated and then to request a check from their accounting folks, and you could lose a week. And a lot of times they're trying to hit deadlines for, Black Friday openings, things like that. One of the other concerns that I learned while going through this process is a monthly audit. I mean, most jurisdictions do an annual audit. Monthly seems a little bit overreaching and time-consuming for staff. So I had a concern with that and would like to see if maybe we can look at maybe biannual audits instead of monthly because of the amount of work that it takes to get them done. Let's see. That was all I had, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember White?
First of all, this is very similar to the CCA that WRCOG came to us with. It's overreach. It's cost increasing. It's less control at the local level, jurisdiction level. I think less participation of ours in the process. If WRCOG is doing the whole process, by us not participating and going through the machinations of the fee calculation, we lose some oversight into what's going on and the process that's going on. We know our developers and we know our developments. And again, I think for a lot of the issues that Mr. Lara raised, I agree with that. I think this is also an opportunity for me to let you know that I heard that in the Calamasa City Council meeting, they were not shy of it, they made it public, that they are holding another meeting with Banning, and it's just 2 cities, not 3. And so until we can get that whole issue under control and start being treated as a equal partner, I think we need to maintain and keep control of our process. So my thought, or my opinion, is that we have nothing to do with this, and that we keep control and make sure that it is not a process that says we have to be part of it. That's where I stand on this.
Did you get all those down? I will say, when this was initially brought up in the executive meeting, there was hardly a word said that was against this, not even against it, there was very little questioning of it. So I'm very concerned that there's not much resistance to it.
Well,
Pro Tem?
my first comment I wrote down was I was skeptical of another bureaucracy taking over something that we're quite capable of doing. We haven't really had an issue with it. It might be a fit for some cities, but I really don't see us as being one of those. Plus, you can take a wait-and-see approach. It says that, if we don't go with the November 30th, if everything goes on timeline, then after April 1st, 2019, you can opt in. Now, they did say that they were going to probably issue opt-ins every January, so it might not be until 2020 to opt in if we decided we wanted to do this in the future. But again, it's a wait-and-see approach. I don't see any benefit of rushing into something, and the first thing I did think about is the CCA that was here, and a way of doing something that we're doing already. So, I'm not so fond of it. My first question also, or second question, was our control, our appeal process. I know it's kind of lengthy if things go wrong now, if we miscalculate, but can you imagine going the other way now? So I don't see any benefits myself, but I'm sure with the research and stuff, if you see stuff that we haven't thought about, you'd come back and say, hey, we didn't think about this. But as of right now, I don't see any need to rush into something like that. So.
When it was brought up in the executive meeting, most of the concerns that were brought up by me, which, you know, I mean, Beaumont has the reputation of being the bad boy on the tump fees. So it was a very difficult situation because all of the things that I brought up to you, including redundancy of staff, that we already had staff on the payroll who were doing this, and that staff was already familiar with what was going on with the city. It's a difficult position for the city of Beaumont to be the only one that's resisting having them do monthly audits and having them take over the calculation of the tump fees, because what didn't come from the perspective that I didn't think that we should cooperate, but I was also concerned that there was no justification for them doing this. They didn't come up with any reasons. They didn't have any data that said, we have to do this because what we're finding out, and there was no, it did not seem to be data-driven. It
Well,
just seemed to be somewhat desire-driven.
Well, according to their approach here on their, it's the benefits of city, it's a win-win, you know, we can't lose because we're not liable, and we save staff time, and, you know, they're the good guys in this, but you're saving staff time, maybe that's way questionable, and then if our fees go up and you've got cumbersome things we're dealing with, really.
Well, I was, when I did bring up the personnel issues, it was a selling point that we could have staff do other things. So,
The concern, if you go through this, because the county is looking to opt out, they really are going to require staff to do all the work anyways, and then basically submit it over to WRCOG, and they're just going to double check. So we're really not freeing up staff, because they're still going to have to complete all the forms that are presented, and then send those forms with the developer over to WRCOG and possibly another copy of the plans. And so we're really becoming more bureaucratic. And again, I think our staff here is very capable of calculating the fees. And they did submit about 15 items to the county where the fees were, there was 3 miscalculations where I disagree with where they were coming from. And then the others were credit agreements where the developer paid full fees and they had a credit agreement, and it was just, we were too bureaucratic on our end to, so those items have been corrected. They were back in 2016. So, and then some of the items that they did get us on were not consistent with the ordinance. And WRCOG felt that they should have been exempt, but we couldn't justify it through the ordinance, so I don't know where they came up with their exemption. Anyhow, it's still going to require our staff to do a lion's share of the work. So.
And keep in mind, we're still collecting other impact fees as well. So, you know, this would just be one fee that's extracted. That we're still collecting everything else that's out there. So, for us administratively, one additional fee calculation in the collection process isn't too terribly onerous on us. But if it got pulled out, it's not going to adjust like that. Maybe on finances, they kind of go through some of the auditing review and processes. It saves some time there. But on the building permit side, probably not a lot.
all right, so,
So you have our direction then, right?
Yes, sir. I think so.
You think you have the tone pretty good?
Read my questions back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Travel authorization for consider approval of travel authorization expenses. I will leave on this while you do discussion. I just want to add a couple of details that I was not able to share prior to this. I did get the agenda of what will be the breakout sessions, et cetera, just yesterday. Otherwise, I would have given more information to Nicole on this. And that was late yesterday afternoon on a conference call with the follow-up that I got on the agenda items. So with that, I will go ahead. You're
right, so item number 13, travel authorization. Recommended council action to consider approval of travel authorization and expenses. Do we have any public comment?
We do not.
Okay, I'll open it up to questions from the council. Comments, suggestions, concerns, or I'll entertain a motion.
I think this is a good thing to get the representation. I would like to see more backup on a request like this, and not necessarily airfare and hotel. I mean, I think that's all reasonable, but information more about what the conference is, and if there was an invitation, the invitation I think would be useful also. But I would like to move that we it's not consider. So I guess we move to approve the travel authorization and expenses for item number 13.
I'll second.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
I will step out on this next item and let the mayor know that she can come back in. This is, this next item, number 14, involves my law firm, so I'm recusing myself.
She was.
No badge. Item 14, approval of city attorney invoices for the month of August 2018.
I move to approve the invoices in the amount of $68,358.15.
Second.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes. Item 15, legislative updates and discussion.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So on August 31st, the state legislature completed their fiscal year legislative session. So that's a good news, bad news thing. So they approved around 900, 1,000 bills that go to the governor's desk for signature. That's the bad news. The good news is from now until January, they can't come up with some new law that affects us negatively.
Or they can change what they...
Yeah, exactly. So the governor has the ability to sign or veto these bills by September 30th. So obviously, Governor Brown is reading. They're on recess to January. Some of the keynote legislation that was passed, one of them relates to public safety. One of them was AB 931, and that was that rules governing the police officers using deadly force. I think we were all kind of familiar with that. And if not, obviously, Chief Delis is very familiar with that and had his own stance on it with the California Chiefs Association. Needless to say, it got stalled in committee, and the legislature did not pull it out of committee at this time. It may be something that comes up next year. It probably will come up next year, but at this point in time, that's not something that was voted on. Another one that did pass was 478. Oh, and I forgot, I passed you out the monthly report from Townsend. That's what I'm reading from. So that was a proposal requiring release of video and audio within 45 days of a critical incident unless doing so interferes with an investigation. So that's a fun one. So that one did get passed. That one's on the governor's desk for veto or signature. There's a proposed water tax that was dealing with trying to produce a voluntary water tax to provide safe drinking water throughout the state of California. For whatever reason, not getting into politics, the Assembly Speaker did not allow that to be heard at the Assembly floor, so that got stuck. The notes does say that it probably will return its face next year, so we'll keep an eye out for that one. Wildfire liability legislation was something that went through in past, and that was somewhat to limit the liability of utility providers on wildfires. Bail reform. So Senate Bill 10 was approved. Under that system, California is going to be, if it's approved or signed into law, would become the first state in the nation to eliminate cash-based bail. So instead of using bail, courts would have local courts to assess a risk-based pretrial analysis of the person that was arrested and set for trial. So you'd have a local court establishing who is risky and who is not risky, and as opposed to doing it the way every other state has done it. So we're leading the charge on that front. Federal legislation, they still haven't passed any of the traditional funding bills, so they need to get down to business sometime soon to avoid government shutdown in October. So we may be seeing some of that come through at DC or not. And then the last thing that I had highlighted on mine that is probably important to everyone in this room is IRS and Treasury Department moved to block efforts by California legislature to help residents avoid the new limit on state and local tax deductions. So that's our tax returns. The state was trying to provide some flexibility on that established $10,000 limit, and the IRS and Treasury Department blocked that. They're accepting comments on the rule through October 11th, and a public hearing will be held on November 5th. That rule is likely to be in place by the end of the year unless something changes and they decide to listen to the comments from the state of California. That's really all I have tonight. The other funding opportunities are in the very back. So Townsend not only does our state and federal lobbying, but they also provide our grant writing services. So frequently they will send over grant opportunities, which then are disseminated to each of the department heads associated with the different themes or the projects identified in each of the grants. So we're actively reviewing those to see if we qualify or not, and if so, coming up with a project list in order to apply. And I can answer anything, questions, at least I can try. Thank you.
I have a question. If we get rid of the justice system and the prisons, do we need police?
That's a good question.
Okay. Just for thought. Thank you.
I'm going to defer to the police chief on that. I want a real answer, otherwise I'm going to stand here and smile.
You'll need more of them. Go the other way. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just.
Yeah, you did.
That was Councilmember White.
No, just real quick, and I have to walk a fine line on, as an appointed police chief, speaking about bills. But I can just say that through this, the Assembly Bill 931 that was proposed by Assembly Member Weber would have detrimental effects on public safety. So it's not that Cal chiefs or us police chiefs are opposed to being accountable. The United States Supreme Court has established reasonableness. I mean, if any other police officer with the same amount of experience was in that same situation, would they act the same or very similar? And so what this bill would do would say that was it necessary, which means every situation would be Monday morning quarterback. So that toy gun that looks shiny and real, once it's determined is not a real weapon, that officer would be prosecuted. And if you could say, well, our district attorney's office wouldn't prosecute him, the attorney general could take the case. And they're just going to be looking for one police department, one police officer to make an example out of. And what the effect that has is, so those hot exigency calls where we go in, and we've had some of those cases where we have to rescue people and lethal force can be used, we're not going to go in. We're going to surround and call out, because we can't risk the officers being criminally prosecuted for just doing their job that y'all hired and paid for them to do. And so my plea as the police chief is, why I work with my assembly members and state senators through your connections, and we'll keep you updated on these bills. That one will come back. It will come back. The 931, it'll just be retitled. That whatever stance that this council can take. For example, you issued a proclamation on the Keeping California Safe, the Retail Act, if you remember that one. So that got stalled by the county registrar of voters not tallying votes, so that won't go before the public till 2020 now. So it's just this game, it feels like, this process of trying to keep public safety intact in this state. But, so it's just us working together with our other electeds to really understand what these bills would mean on the back end effect, and what they mean to some of our socioeconomically depressed areas of not just this community, but others. Where these people need us the most, we're going to be tied up on planning and thinking instead of acting. So that's all I had on that.
I was talking about the bail law that did pass.
The bail law didn't pass. It did pass, right? Yeah. And so we're hoping the governor vetoes that. They've already instituted this computer system and did it in some trials, and in every case, it got it wrong. You know, we're not saying, again, that the cash bail system doesn't need to be fixed. Right. Certainly it's, you know, it's broken. But at the same time, you're using computer analytics that doesn't know people and, you know, the cases. I don't know exactly what the right answer is, but you can always spot the wrong one. And so, yes, it needs fixed, and some brilliant people will get it fixed, but that bill's not the answer either. But we'll see what the governor does with that.
Thank you for your honesty, Chief.
Yes. You're welcome, Chief. Yeah, Kyle, can you please keep an eye on the sober living homes? Those have a tendency to bring blight in some areas, because city really can't require any type of an entitlement. It's treated as a single-family dwelling, and can create some potential problems. And then I wish Senator Monning would have been around when my kids were little to impose a voluntary tax. Would be kind of like me imposing a voluntary punishment on my kid, I guess. So where was that person when I needed the
I
help?
also want to know who's the analyst that projected revenue. How much did they think they were going to?
That's all I have, Mayor, sorry.
Good point. Thank you. Council reports. I'll just go straight down the order. I leave tomorrow morning for the DC trip. And one of the things that I did ask was how it could be maximized. And there's a meeting with the National League of Cities right before the White House meeting. And so I took their points on how it was recommended to maximize it, and hopefully I'll be able to turn that around in some sort of a summary report for you going forward. The Vets Expo, Anita Worthen would be calling me at midnight if I did not mention it. It is September 20th from 9 a.m. to noontime, and it is a job resource fair. So everybody and anybody who knows someone who would benefit from it, you don't have to be a veteran. Anybody who needs resource information on how to get jobs, or what jobs are available, or who's hiring. They've gotten very good turnout this year. They have RTA attending, and they have some other new agencies attending. So we're hoping that they get much more interest from both people who need jobs and people who have them. I went to the Women's Club, and they are going to be putting flowers in our pots that are our new pots out front, if everybody hasn't, or anybody hasn't seen them. The city did a great job of, staff did a great job of getting the pots and putting them up there to dress up the entrance to City Hall, and they put some plants in there and made some nice choices, and it looks great. And the Women's Club is getting organized to provide spring flowers. They didn't make the fall deadline here, so they're looking forward to spring, and I think it's a good way to get the Women's Club more involved in making sure that the city keeps looking better and better every day. I attended a presentation of the Historical Society on the history of Beaumont. I can't believe all the things I found out, and I asked them if they would like to come to the city and provide the presentation to city staff at a lunchtime. So I brought that up to the city manager, and hopefully we can coordinate them coming and doing a lunchtime presentation for staff at City Hall, where they get to learn more about what Beaumont looked like, and I think it fits in very nicely with some of the work we're doing to do economic development. League of Cities was great. I'm sure somebody else will talk about it, so I'll skip that one. And go see Agatha Christie at the Beaumont Unified School District. They have tickets on sale now for Agatha Christie's story, and then there were none. So that's it. With that, I'll move to Councilmember Lara.
Thank you, Mayor. League of Cities was great. I appreciate the opportunity to attend that. Some of the classes I attended were local government's role in meeting California's environmental goals. That was very interesting. Obviously, they had some sessions on homelessness crisis. And one of them that was also very interesting, and it kind of touched on the unfunded mandate of retirement, was the bargaining perspective from a union and a management expert. So that was very good. And the expo had some great vendors. Chief, there's a flyer I'd like to share with you. It was great. The other thing I just want to mention to the city manager was, sorry that my uniform jacket didn't come in like the other council members did, but that's okay. I'll look forward to getting my tan jacket later. We touched base on the RFP, and I think that that's great that we're talking about that. And I know that we had gone through that in the past. The concern that I have is just staff is doing RFPs. I think they're great. They're giving good staff reports. I just think no matter what we do, we're still going to have two people questioning everything. And so I think the process is working fine the way it is. Staff's doing a great job. And we could have copies among copies and we'll still get questions. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
So I also attended League of City Conference. Very unique opportunity to talk to the vendors and see what other ideas are out there and how we might be able to modify things we're doing or establish new types of programs. So I always find that very interesting, and I got some ideas that I'll share with the manager in the future. Attended several workshops and meetings as well. They're very valuable because they help educate the city council members to their duties and responsibilities, and gives us a lot of insight and different ways of looking at things. So that was very appreciative. And their speaker on leadership qualities was very motivating. A lot of self-reflection went into that, in my part at least, looking at what makes an effective leader. So I really enjoyed that. So it was very beneficial. We attended the RCA meeting, and Beaumont submitted fees to the MSHCP, 111 permits for May and 143 for June. We talked about some reserve habitat in San Bernardino County for an agreement with the Harupa Valley Development for the moving of the Delhi sandfly. So we had to create some habitat in a different county actually for that. Our total acreage for RCA is 59,493 that are in the total reserve now. And of course, last but not least, the species of the month, the American bitterin. What is a bittern, you say?
Would you spell that, please?
Bittern, B-I-T-T-E-R-N. It is a part of the heron family. It's a bird. And that was discussed because we always talk about how these different species are affected within our habitat areas. And this is one of the birds that uses our habitat for foraging during the winter. So we talked about ways of protecting their foraging areas. And that's all.
Thank you. Councilmember Santos?
Yeah, on my side is the, I really like to thanks, Kyle on this. I mean, the staff. I mean, Todd in here, Chris in here, especially putting together the, economic development strategic plan. Now it means that we're really looking forward or going forward on this. I really appreciate that. Thanks a lot giving that report. Just like they said, I mean, I'm part of the, we attended the conference in the Long Beach League of California cities. We learn a lot, and especially on my side, being appointed and get certified by the league on the ethics, laws, and principles, which is I gave it to Nicole's. Now I'm in compliance. so on that side, and also the other side of the coin, and I know Mayor Nancy Carroll last meeting, and I discussed this to City Manager Todd Pardon on the Grace Street and between the First Street and the Third Street, it should be putting on the agenda, and then I didn't see it in here, but I spoke to him, and he said, I'll explain that. I mean, I'll give you information on that. So, but was put it on our future agenda last meeting, and was not on the agenda. And I like to say that I apologize on the public right now who's listening and watching us. Hopefully, we will have an answer on the next meeting on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember White?
I also enjoyed the conference. A couple things that we looked at that I think would be really good, and I wrote some of this with Mr. Pardon. They had some restrooms, remote restrooms that could be turned off and on from a phone, which means we could have the restrooms that could be available sort of on demand if the sports team is out exercising. I think we should look at those. There was a company that will review our utility fees for the last 4 years, and if they find that we've been overcharged, that's the only time that they will get paid, is once they come to the city and say we found X amount of dollars overcharged. The workout, they had a lot of workout equipment for parks, and I think those were something we should keep in mind. And there's some splash pad issues too. I think that's important. And I was approached by a parent who told me that their child is in a wheelchair and during the hot summer can't go swimming. And so they travel a long ways, Moreno Valley and Fullerton, to get to splash pads. And it made me think of other kids who just can't swim because they haven't learned how to swim. So that's my pitch for the splash pad. They also have these cameras that I think are very interesting that you can put on poles over the mailboxes. And they're about $7,000, and one city would bought 3 cameras and would rotate them throughout the month and move them from spot to spot, and it's a way to help that. Todd and I met with a gentleman named Jeff Christensen with a company called Entry Point, and I think it was a very enlightening meeting where we talked about the idea of bringing a public utility broadband, and it's a little bit more than just the idea of the 1 gig, and he's offered to come back in the October, and I think if we could do a workshop, or if we don't do a workshop, if a couple of you want to meet with him this time instead of me, it's really to me some exciting opportunities for Beaumont. And when you mentioned the bittern foraging during the winter, I thought of What about the Denver veterans? Because they're foraging now, right? They wouldn't have to change, they could still be the, never mind.
Going deep.
Oh, I just wanted to steal somebody's thunder.
I don't know if that's stealing. I think you're okay.
That was him. All right, I didn't say a word.
Please, man, help us.
Development.
Help us, thank you.
You all set?
I'm done.
Yeah.
Economic development update? We need more on economic development.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. So the Economic Development Committee was set to meet last week, and the meeting was canceled due to lack of quorum. It probably just had to deal with the fact that League of Cities was going on. We had 2 of our members at that, and my guess is the gentleman from Riverside County was probably also there, so that was 3. And lastly, the school student member has yet to be appointed, so that's another body, if you will, that wasn't unable to attend, because we're 1 short. So I think we'll end up doing a quick discussion at the next committee meeting about wrapping up the survey, and then just bringing in the items that's, or the completed surveys, and then also providing a list of businesses that committee members may have not had a chance to go out to, or just got an outright refusal or I'm not interested. That's perfectly fine. We just want a result. And we'll take that and we'll kind of tally up what happened and how the survey went. So that's kind of what we plan for next meeting, but I don't have an update from the last committee meeting. And lastly, I misspoke on the bail bill at the previous one. That was actually signed by the governor. So it's not a hypothetical, it is a law.
He signed that, huh?
Yes.
Well, he's out of terms, so I guess.
So that's it.
Thank you. City Treasurer report?
Yes, we did have a meeting on September 10th for Finance and Audit. Alana presented us with a checklist for the internal controls that the auditors had brought out that needed to be improved. And we went over those. We talked about priorities and some questions. There was a request that the checklist be expanded to include some completion dates. Some of the items have been completed since the last audit, but we wanted more information on the checklist. That was pretty much the meeting, took up the whole meeting, so.
Thank you. City Clerk,
Nothing to report. Thank you.
City Attorney report.
Yes, briefly. Enclosed in the agenda packet at item number 16 is a list of the pending lawsuits against the city. And the first one is Charles Peters, DBA Pioneer Mobile Village versus the City of Beaumont. In that case, Mr. Peters alleged that the city would not or did not issue him a permit to operate his mobile village. And the city's contention has been that the reason it didn't issue the permits is there were multiple violations at the park. So the city has disagreed with the position that he's taken and has aggressively defended the matter. There were 2 employees that were named in the case. One of the employees has been dismissed by the court. There is a motion pending to dismiss the other employee, and the city has not been served. So really the only other served party is this employee, where we have a motion pending to have that employee dismissed from the case. The HUP cases, number 2, we started with 8 cases that were filed by the HUPs over the course of a couple years. And right now we're down to just the 1 case, and that's still at the pretrial stage. And then we have the Urban Logic versus City of Beaumont case. We are actively preparing that case at this point for trial. We have a trial setting conference that is coming up. ULC, or Urban Logic, as you know, is a company that was owned by Mr. Dillon, Mr. Egger, and Mr. Morjani, all who have now pled guilty to committing felonies against the city. Urban Logic is suing the city for unpaid invoices. The idea that the company, which was owned by 3 now convicted individuals, would sue the city for unpaid invoices is repugnant. We have demanded that they dismiss the complaint. They have refused to do so. We have filed a cross complaint against them seeking several $1 million in damages on behalf of the city. AC Equipment versus the City of Beaumont. We're aggressively defending that case as well. That case has been ordered by the court to mediation, which is scheduled for this Friday. Mr. Parton will be attending that with my partner, Brent Clemmer. And then the Elijah Scott Talley case, that is very early. That case is early in the early pleading stages. And then also, I just wanted to mention some of the claims that the city has pending against third parties. As you know, there were restitution orders issued in the criminal proceedings, and so far, from the individuals that were convicted of criminal actions, there has been over $12 million recovered, and that includes the full amount that was available under Mr. Aklufi's malpractice policy having been paid to the city. So the city sued Mr. Aklufi, and his insurance company paid the full amount that was available under their policy. In addition to that, the city is pursuing some other professionals. I don't want to go into too much detail because with some of them, we have claims pending, extensive claims that we've submitted to them with exhibits, and we are in settlement negotiations, and those are delicate situations, and so I don't want to go into detail on some of those. The former auditors, we have submitted a claim to them, and we are in discussions with their attorney in attempting to resolve the claims that the city has. The city has also sued the former bond counsel to the city in the case City of Beaumont versus McFarland and Anderson, and that case is in the very, very early stages. In addition to that, the city is pursuing a $15 million claim under the city's city's theft and dishonesty policy issued through AIG, and we've submitted extensive documentation, my office has, to them, and we're working on that claim, and that's all I really want to go into at this point on that issue. So there are a number of claims that are out there that we are pursuing, and some of those will be resolved through settlement, and as those occur, we'll report back to you. So we are aggressively working on those claims. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You mentioned 3 of the individuals that were former Urban Logic?
Right.
Have been found guilty?
Right, and that would be Mr. Dillon, Mr. Morjani, and Mr. Egger.
Okay, just because we had some folks at the podium that said that no, we haven't done anything in that regard, so I just want to make sure that that's clear that we are pursuing, we have pursued that.
Okay, just I can't imagine that there's any confusion on this, but to the extent that a couple people in town may be confused about it, those individuals pled guilty to felonies. Like I said, the city's, that there was over $12 million ordered in restitution and payments as a result of the lawsuit that we filed against the former city attorney. They paid the full amount that was available under their policy. In addition to that, in addition to their conviction, their company that the city contracted with was Urban Logic, and we're seeking several $1 million in damages from them. And when I say several $1 million, I'm using that term loosely. We're seeking substantial damages from that, and we're, Mr. Nolan in my office is working on preparing that case for trial, and we're doing everything that we need to do to be prepared to go to trial on that case.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thanks,
City Manager.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
But you wanted the good news.
Oh, yes.
We do.
The Denver Bitterens are 2-0.
But the Broncos are 0-2.
Yeah, the L.A.
Oh, I'm sorry.
L.A. Chargers are, what did they? I think they lost the first game. So they're behind the Denver Bitterens. So just make sure we're clear on
Isn't everyone behind the Denver
They
Veterans?
are. Multiple Super Bowl champion Denver Bitterens. No, we actually signed final documents this evening for the wastewater treatment bond series 2018A. So those bonds were sold. Every segment of those bonds were sold last week. So we plan to close by the 27th. So you'll have your $90 million in hand. There were some folks out there that said you couldn't access the market. You did sell them regarding the open market. They are insured bonds, which saved you a significant amount of money. There were folks out there that said you couldn't get insurance on your bonds. So those were all very, very good things. You had major players that were involved in purchasing your bond debt as well. So the other positive news, when you look at the top end, your maximum debt service, you're running just under $5.1 million. So that came in about $350,000 below what we had in our pro formas and what we ran. So your A+ stable bond rating, your insurance, and the fact that you had very marketable bonds meant that you're able to get those sold in a 24-hour period, and also meant that you brought them in below what your otherwise forecasted rates were, and means that you have a total net interest across the average of all your costs and everything else right around 3.99%. So you're below 4% in terms of your total interest rate as well. So congratulations. That was very, very amazing work. So the next step in the process is Christine and I are going to visit with OCSD, talk to their executive director tomorrow to talk about the information that they need from us to go ahead and work with us to allow us to flow into the brine line and into the treatment plant. So that effort is ongoing as we speak. So hopefully we've got some good news. Of course, they won't give us an official "you're in" until we get everything else done. Pre-treatment, all those kinds of things are critical to making all that happen and its permission. So we'll keep pursuing that aggressively over the next year or so as we try to get closer and closer to get wrapped up. And so the final thing was the effort to relocate the deli fly was really utilizing all those $500,000 or so funds that came in to buy little pieces of bread that they used to take them over to San Bernardino. So we're very excited to hear about the very friendly way to relocate the deli fly. That concludes my
Into one. Very
report.
smart.
Thank you.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yeah.
We still have our budget workshop? That's
Yes,
still,
the 26th at 6 p.m. in a semi-formal dress.
Thank you.
All right.
The three of us will plan what jacket we wear.
Yeah, hopefully my jacket will be in by then.
I think it's the red lame smoking jacket.
Jacket.
You didn't get yours either,
This
Mayor?
has
That's
definitely
two jackets
got
you missed.
a slant to it, if you know
Yeah.
what I mean. Right, Christine? You have your
Yeah.
jacket. I know.
Wow.
All right.
Is it
Way
true
to
the bonds
hog.
sold faster than tickets to a YouTube concert? I just heard that on the street, I'm just saying.
Yes.
All right. Doing something right.
No, that was the Q2 concert.
Really?
Yes.
You still can't,
Are we all set?
the radio still can't sell out though.
Future agenda items.
So I don't want to drop the RFP thing yet, but I don't want to put it on the agenda yet. So I want to just do some more research. I do have a legal question though for John. John, my question for you is, if I were to, as a council member, request to see some of the backup documentation and stuff for the RFP, does that automatically become public record? Or does a request still have to be made from the public to see something that I've seen, that I've gone into and see on my own?
It's a public record. I mean, it's a public record with the exception that if we're in a situation where you've got multiple companies that are bidding, there may be proprietary information that they have in there, and we typically wouldn't release it until the contract is awarded.
But if I wanted just to go in and see the score report or whatever and say, hey, let me see that, that's something I can look at, and it's there anyway for records, it just doesn't have to be automatically brought out, correct?
That's correct.
All right, that was my cut. So,
One thing I would emphasize is that as the elected officials of the city, you're the custodian of these public records, really. And so, you know, you have an access to any records of the city that you guys want to see, anytime.
and that might be enough to answer the question.
And there wasn't time to say that it wasn't.
No, I know.
So-
And I did want to add that I have no problem with the staff doing their job. I think that they're doing an excellent job.
So-
I'm just trying to add that extra.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the reason that it's not typically released prior to the contract being awarded is if other companies that are competing for the work obtain copies of what their competitors are proposing, it can take away from, it's supposed to be it should be a fair process and fair to all, and so it can affect the fairness of that process.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. No more future agenda. With that, I will adjourn the City Council meeting of September 18th at 7:35 p.m.
8:35. She said 7.
Oh, I'm sorry, 8:35. Washington. Washington time. Too tall.